Hello, I'm David Roger, General Counsel for the Las Vegas Police Protective Association. In this video and another video that I'll be sending out, I want to talk to you about a recent case called Scott versus Smith, and actually it's Scott versus Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And there has been some, I think, perhaps overreaction to this case. Some people have said we need to change the way we do segmenting, and I don't think that's the case at all. And as we go through this case, you'll understand. And so first, let me talk big picture here. This is a case in which officers went to do a legal 2000. They got the guy in custody, and he ended up dying. Or maybe he's brain dead in the hospital. But either way, the family filed a civil rights lawsuit against the department and officers. And so the question initially was, are these officers entitled to qualified immunity? This is before a trial has even been had. And the federal court judge looked at the evidence and said, I have to look at the evidence most favorable to the plaintiffs. And so he did that. He ruled that the officers were not entitled to qualified immunity. Metro appealed the case up to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And once again, the court said, there is no trial. We have to, in order to make this legal decision, look at the facts most favorable to the plaintiffs, the decedent's family. And so you'll hear some facts that we contest because we went out on this call. We've seen the body-worn camera, but nevertheless, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says we're going to base our decision on this set of facts. And so if the department decides to push it through to a jury trial, the rest of the evidence will come out. And so when you read the opinion, understand that the officers did not do some of the things that are alleged, but this is a legal issue. So let's dig down into the legal issue. And this first part will be, did the officers, based upon the facts in the decision, use excessive force? I want to read this first part of the case because it is kind of telling as to where the decision is going to go. Early in the morning on March 3rd, 2019, Roy Scott called the police for help, but he did not get it. Guess where this case is going? The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers came to the scene. Scott was unarmed and in mental distress. Though he complied with the officers' orders and was not suspected of a crime, officers initiated physical contact, forced Scott to the ground, and used body weight force to restrain him. Shortly after, Scott lost consciousness and he was later pronounced dead. Here are further facts about what they are basing their decision on. And understand, these are not the true facts, but these are the facts that the plaintiffs allege. Officers approached Scott and grabbed his arms. Scott repeatedly pleaded, "Please," and "What are you doing?" in a distressed voice while officers pulled him to the ground. At first, the officers held Scott's arms at his side while he was lying on his back. In this position, Scott screamed, struggled, and pled with the officers to leave him alone for over 2 minutes. The officers then eventually rolled Scott onto his stomach, repeatedly ordering Scott to stop. With Scott on his stomach and his hands restrained behind his back, the officer put his body weight on Scott's back and neck for about 1 or 2 minutes. At the same time, the other officer put his weight on Scott's legs, restraining his lower body. Scott's pleas turned increasingly incoherent and breathless as officer applied his body weight. After handcuffing him, the officers attempted to roll Scott on his side as he continued to incoherently cry out he wanted to be left alone. When they rolled Scott over, his face was bloody from contact with the ground. Scott stopped yelling and trashing around for a few minutes. Scott did not respond when Smith and the officers tried to wake or revive him. Shortly after, when paramedics arrived, Scott was still unresponsive. Scott was pronounced dead after paramedics removed him from the scene. Plaintiff's expert found that Scott had died from restraint asphyxia. And so, there are a number of different terms that they use: restraint asphyxia, positional asphyxia, compression asphyxia, and all of that really deals with the same thing. And that's when a person is on their stomach, their lungs are compressed, they can't breathe because they're in an excited delirium perhaps, and as a result they lose consciousness and lack of oxygen to the brain, et cetera, and they either die or they're in a comatose state. There's another Ninth Circuit case called Drummond versus Anaheim Police Department, in which similar circumstances, the guy was handcuffed and it was alleged that he was on his stomach and officers kneeled on his neck and back and he was brain dead. And so that's my confusion between the two cases, but they're both cited by the Ninth Circuit. So understand that the courts are not saying that you can't segment an individual. What the courts are saying is that you have to be very careful if you're handcuffing someone when they're on their stomach. And if you do that, put them in a recovery position right away. Don't leave them on their stomach. That's all they're saying. But there are some people who have said that we have to stop segmenting, and that's just not the case. And in fact, when the court did the analysis, the court applied the Graham versus Connor analysis, looked at the severity of the crime and the use of force, and did a balancing analysis, as is done in Graham versus Connor. And they said with at least with respect to the use of force, the actual use of force, putting someone down on the ground, on their stomach, kneeling on their back, kneeling on their neck, and not letting them breathe, it can be deadly force. And so I want to make sure that this is perfectly clear. This is what the Ninth Circuit case, or Ninth Circuit, said in Scott versus Smith. First, we hold that Smith and Huntsman, those are the two officers, used deadly force. To classify the force used, we consider the specific circumstances of this case. And so they are saying that based upon these circumstances, these specific facts, that they are alleging that the two officers handcuffed the person, the suspect, or Scott rather, on his stomach, kneeled on his back, kneeled on his neck for a period of time, causing him to not be able to breathe. Under those specific circumstances, that is considered a deadly force. They go on. Huntsman used body weight compression on Scott's back and neck during and shortly after handcuffing him. While Smith restrained Scott's lower body, Huntsman kept his body weight on Scott's back and neck for about 1 or 2 minutes, while Scott's pleas turned increasingly incoherent and breathless. Shortly after Scott lost consciousness, he was declared dead after paramedics removed him from the scene. This was severe, deadly force. And then it goes on and talks about the other case. Our precedent establishes that the use of body weight compression on a prone individual can cause compression asphyxia. No news alert there. We all know that if you're on top of someone and they can't breathe, then it could result in their death. So that is this case. In my opinion, you don't have to eliminate using segmenting. All this court is saying is that if you have someone on their stomach and they can't breathe, it could cause their death and be considered deadly force. And so trainers, whether it's Metro or other departments that watch these videos, understand that this case really is limited to these specific facts. And we don't need to change policy. We don't need to change training. We already trained that you can't sit on a guy's neck We already trained that if the person is on their stomach, you turn them over as quickly as you can after you get them in cuffs. Put them in what we call at Metro a recovery position. So I'm going to talk in this next video about why we're even doing these legal 2000s, and this was kind of addressed in these 2 Ninth Circuit cases. But for now, understand that these cases, Scott versus Smith and Drummond versus Anaheim Police Department, are really limited to their facts, and we don't have to overreact. As always, thank you for watching. I'm sorry this video is long, but this is an important case. Call me if you have any questions. Email me at droger@lvppa.com, and please stay safe.
111, 110.